Peppa Pig is the most popular cartoon of the last 20 years. That's a lot of time, and several generations have grown up, become adults, and gone through their Peppa phase. But I bet all these generations never noticed the huge number of animation mistakes in this show. Did you catch them? Like in the episode The Playground, where we see several kids with their families having fun at the park. In this first scene, if you pay attention to where everyone is positioned, it's easy to spot the mistake. Mama Cat is here on the right, near the white fence, while her daughter, Candy, is playing a few meters away from her, judging by the angle. But when the scene zooms in, Mama Cat just appears right next to Candy in a split second. They say maternal instincts can give women superpowers, after all. Another weird teleportation happens in this same scene if you go back to the initial shot and look at the positions of Grandpa Dog and Mama Sheep. We can see that Grandpa is in front of the slide and Mama Sheep is a bit farther back. But when the scene zooms in, Grandpa magically shows up right next to the slide, and Mama Sheep, I have no idea where she went. Honestly, it's super strange. She just disappeared. Did they forget to draw her in the scene? Or did she glitch out and go flying somewhere, like in Skyrim? Get your dragon shouts ready because today, we're diving into the best new animation mistakes in Peppa Pig here on Zigzag. This mistake is literally impossible. In the episode where the kids go to physical education class with Grandpa Rabbit, we get a little tour of the place with Madame Gazelle before arriving at the main attraction, where the man of the moment is waiting with his grand entrance. Right here at the start, notice the students' positions. We can see that Candy Cat is in the back and Emily Elephant is in the front. But a little later, when the camera changes angles, the two have swapped positions. Of course, we already know this type of supernatural phenomenon is not only super common in Peppa's world, but also never happens in isolation. Later in the episode, we see Danny Dog and Zoe Zebra experience the same traumatic event. At the beginning of the scene, where Grandpa Rabbit tells his story from the past, we can see Danny and Zoe standing one behind the other, with no one between them. But, as you might have guessed, when the camera angle changes, now there are people between them. The weirdest part of all this is that whenever people teleport, they don't even seem to notice. I guess they're so used to it that it's completely normal for them. Would you like to teleport randomly like that? Let us know in the comments how you would react if you teleported like this, using the hashtag #teleport. In the episode Molly Mole, we get an obvious little story meant to introduce Molly to the group and the audience. She promptly befriends Peppa and invites her to visit her house, which is a novelty for the little pig who lives in a regular home. Since Molly is a mole, she takes Peppa through several underground tunnels that her dad dug, and they soon arrive at her room. And this is where the craziness of this episode begins. Pay close attention to the items in this room. We have these two portraits on the wall, one on each side. There's a traffic cone here on the side, a doll in front of the bed on top of the chest, and this ladder behind the bed. A bit later in the episode, Daddy Pig is invited to see the house when he comes to pick up Peppa, which is funny because he's an engineer and knows how to build houses. His reaction to seeing a tunnel underground and rooms like big holes is hilarious! But when he gets to Molly's room, that's when the magic happens. The two pictures on the wall? Now there are three, and they're in different spots too. The traffic cone apparently met another traffic cone, and they had a baby, because now there are 3 cones. I bet this baby cone will play for Brazil's national team someday. The doll that was on the chest packed her things and left, and even moved the ladder, because now it's in front of the bed, not behind it anymore. The next mistake is something I wouldn't know how to handle. In the episode Masks, the children have a special class with Madame Gazelle, where they're given various items to make masks for a later game. Madame Gazelle makes it very clear that they can't use glitter because of the incident. But this is where the mistake appears. On the first table, we can see these two containers, one with scissors and the other with colored markers, placed side by side. But when the camera zooms out, what always happens? The usual, things have moved. Now one of the containers is on the other side of the table, while the other one is still near its original spot. And as I said, these kinds of things usually happen in pairs. On another table, we see these 3 trays with colors, but when the camera pulls back, one of them has simply been erased from existence. It's probably the same thing that happened to Mummy Sheep in the playground episode. I'm starting to get scared of the power that a change in camera angle has. You never know what might happen, but one thing that can guarantee you'll always know what's going on is clicking the red button to subscribe to the channel and, most importantly, turning on the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss a video and will always be in the loop with everything happening here on the channel. This next animation mistake is something no one can convince me wasn't a prank by Zoe Zebra. In the episode about the train trip, the students are super excited to finally ride on a train. And, as you might imagine, it's a huge hassle organizing this crowd. Only our favorite vampirist could manage to do it without pulling out her horns in frustration. But as per Murphy's annoying law, if something can go wrong, it will. And that's exactly what happens. Pedro Pony starts panicking because he lost his ticket just as it was his turn to board the train. If you look closely, actually, you don't even have to look that closely because it's so obvious. There's nothing on the ground around him. Like, there's no way. There's absolutely nothing on the ground except Pedro himself. But then she, the camera, strikes again. It cuts to Zoe Zebra pointing at the ground, and voila, like magic, the camera cuts back to Pedro, and there's the ticket on the ground next to him. Dude, I gotta ask, how? Either the camera watching Peppa and her friends is some kind of mysterious entity transmitting its memories to us, or the theory that makes the most sense to me, Zoe played a trick on Pedro. It's super easy for someone who's watched a few YouTube videos about magic and sleight of hand to casually walk by, snatch the ticket from his pocket, wait for chaos to erupt just for fun, and then, with a flick of the wrist, toss the ticket near him, and in the same motion of throwing it, point to it, and act all innocent like, "Oh, look! It's been on the ground this whole time. Oh my god, this is so weird. Like, really? Like, oh my god, right?" In the Jumble Sale episode, yet another impossible teleportation happens that's hard to ignore. When the episode finally reaches the moment to showcase the bizarre items, we can see the positions of the characters here. Mrs. Rabbit is at the back of the room, in front of the window, while Mummy Cat and Madame Gazelle are at the front, in the center of the classroom. But, as always, the camera changes angles, and you guessed it. Now, Mummy Cat is at the back of the room where Mrs. Rabbit was, and Mrs. Rabbit is nowhere to be seen in this frame. On top of that, Mummy Cat didn't even stop exactly where Mrs. Rabbit had been standing. She's now positioned between the two windows on the wall, rather than directly in front of them, as Mrs. Rabbit was in the wider shot. How do the people around them not notice this? And the final mistake shows how even the smallest details in Peppa's world don't escape chaos. In the episode where the school roof is leaking, Peppa goes to her mom to tell her what happened, and we can see the magnets on the fridge behind her, specifically the A and B magnets. Of course, once again, the camera jumps from one character to another, and when it cuts back to Mummy Pig, the B magnet has vanished, as expected, and if you look closely, you'll notice other magnets have appeared slightly to the left. It's super weird, seriously.